Last week on part 1 of episode 2 on learning to drum.
Don't have a practice pad just yet, that's okay. Doesn't matter if you play traditional or matched. And a style that I've developed is the gelatin mold effect. This is the form of match grip that we're going to teach, and I have 5 strokes that I teach people. Yeah, let's try that again. Remember, it's like throwing a paper airplane to the ground. There you go, good. Throw that paper airplane to the ground. What I was wondering though, and I've talked to a really nice individual, global ambassador, meaning he travels around the world talking about not only the history of drumming, but also the techniques that is used throughout time. And his name is...
Hey, Dom! And I know the second person I needed to go to was you, because you have a tremendous history of your teachers and who they studied from, and it goes back to these 3 what I'd call founding fathers of Western drumming. That would be Sanford A Moeller, Billy Gladstone, and George Lawrence Stone. So welcome to the show, Dom.
I want to learn from these guys. How can I track them down to take lessons? And Max Roach said, too late. They're dead. That was the question that Max said, that's where you're going to go. He said, under Billy Gladstone, the best student is Shelly Manne. Under George Lawrence Stone, it's Joe Morello. Under Sanford Moeller was Jim Chapin. I said, wow. Now, he said to me, the first one to begin with is Joe Morello. I said, oh, man. So now, it's still 1971. I'm 18 years old. And my teacher, Al Miller, who was a long-time teacher, who was just a great, fantastic teacher. I studied with him for about 5 years, up until the age of like 17 and 18 years old. And he was just so inspired and excited about drumming, and he would share knowledge all the time. Just a beautiful guy. So Buddy Rich and Al Miller were good friends. They were both in the Marines together, and they both were martial art instructors.
Oh, yeah.
So at this time, I said to Al Miller, I said, boy, this is great. Al said, I want you to meet Buddy Rich. We're going to go backstage and hear him play. And that whole story of meeting Buddy was a whole nother story we can get into some other time. But
Yeah.
to meet Buddy that first time was really an adventure.
That's right, yeah.
I meet Buddy, we're backstage, and I said to Buddy Rich, I said, boy, Mr. Rich, gosh, you have such incredible facility. How did you learn this stuff? And Buddy turns to me and says, Billy Gladstone, George Lawrence Stone, Sanford Moeller. I said, what's with you guys with these 3 guys? What's going on here? I said.
Yeah.
They said, those are the guys. Gladstone taught finger movement, finger technique.
Right.
Morello, through George Lawrence Stone, I learned this free stroke, this rebound stroke.
Right.
And then through Chapin, of course, was Moeller, which was this whip stroke.
Right.
So now, we're backstage. Buddy's about to go out and perform. And who comes walking in? We were sitting backstage. Who comes walking in but Joe Morello? This was like, I said, this is incredible. Joe Morello, who had been playing with the Dave Brubeck Quartet, recorded arguably the greatest jazz song in the world, Take 5, which was a jazz swing song in 5/4, which was an incredible feel. Morello comes down and sits next to me to watch Buddy Rich. I've got Morello on my right, and I've got Al Miller on my left. I am like, this is like a dream.
A drummer heaven, yeah.
I'm sitting backstage about 3 feet from Buddy's drum set, and Buddy's about to go on and play. So I'm watching this, and I'm taking this in. And the important thing about going out to hear live music, when you hear live music and performers play in front of you, your brain seems to remember it more fully.
Yeah.
I can remember all of the different live performances I've gone to like it was yesterday. We go to hear Buddy play. Buddy played fantastic. He played incredibly well. And he played this incredible solo on the snare drum. It was like 15 minutes of playing on the snare drum. There were 2,000 people in the audience. Within that solo on the snare drum, he brings these 2,000 people to their feet, screaming and yelling and applauding. So I witnessed, just from a snare drum, he lifted these people up. He finished the solo, told the people, I'll see you for the second set, and he walks off stage. I sat back and I said, oh my gosh, what the heck just happened? This was incredible.
Right.
And having Morello there, Morello knew exactly what happened. He understood the Gladstone technique, the Moeller technique, and George Lawrence Stone technique, and Joe began to explain it right there to me. When he explained it to me, Al Miller said, Dom, I think it's time that you go take lessons with Morello. So that's how the beginning started, where I met Joe Morello and began taking lessons with him. Fortunately, Joe was teaching at a store called Dorn and Kirshner, which was in Union City, New Jersey.
Okay. That's not a bad drive.
Yeah, it was easy for me to Long Island to kind of get there
Right.
and take lessons. And that began the journey of first going to Morello to learn this technique from George Lawrence Stone.
Amazing. What an amazing story, Dom. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, you also studied with Shelly Manne, is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and then you also studied with Jim Chapin. And what we're doing, we just talked about, I call them 5 basic strokes in drumming. Some people have 4, some people have 6, but they all kind of bleed in together at some point.
Morello, under George Lawrence Stone taught him the free stroke.
Okay.
The free stroke is a rebound stroke.
Mm-hmm.
That's all the free stroke is. And we can play this rebound stroke from a position of a full stroke,
Mm-hmm.
a half stroke, or a low stroke. Each of those strokes is a free stroke
Correct.
in 3 different positions. So the free stroke is the rebound stroke to let the stick bounce.
Sure.
And the positions are full stroke, half stroke, and low stroke, of which I use the free stroke in 3 of them. So that's the clarity of terminology. And what was amazing, Morello, Chapin, and Shelly Manne, they were all very concerned about terminology,
Mm-hmm.
to use the proper terminology so we can describe it. Now,
Right.
some people play a full stroke, but they do not use the free stroke.
Mm-hmm.
If you hold the stick tight and throw the stick down and then pull it up, that's also a full stroke.
Right.
It's just not the free stroke.
Right.
The free stroke is a relaxed position, starting from either a full stroke position, half or low, and I throw the stick down and let the stick totally rebound as if I'm letting the stick out of my hand and it's bouncing back into my hand.
Right.
And that's the free stroke. Now what happens is we have to understand rebound.
Right.
Rebound is this. If I do this, that's rebound.
Mm-hmm.
I push the stick down and it comes back up. So when I play this full stroke, one dribble, one rebound would be this.
Right.
Hence the free stroke.
I've been teaching. Next year is going to be my 30 years of teaching privately, and most of my students are beginning students or intermediate students that want to gear themselves up for high school band. So it could be marching band, it could be concert band or orchestra, or it could be pep or jazz band. With the drum set, each style or I should say a genre or setting or ensemble has a different approach. So let's fast forward into drum corps style marching band, and we have this exercise called 8 on the hand, which is just a sequential pattern of free strokes, is what I would call them. But then, so it just basically comes down to where you're almost dribbling a basketball, a little flick of the wrist, and then the fingers and the wrist pretty much keep that momentum going. But really, it's the rebound that's doing all the work. So,
Absolutely, and that's a great exercise. I'm familiar with the drum corps exercise, and that is the free stroke in movement.
right. Okay. So there's a
So again,
difference.
remember, we learned step one, we learned the stroke and how to rebound.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I go to move it, I'm now dribbling the stick, much like I did here.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So, so that's the dribble part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what I noticed from these older guys, Chapin, Morello, and Shelly Manne, they were stringent on understanding that form of that stick coming back and feeling that rebound.
Right. Right.
And we would go through stick control that way, very slowly. Each stroke was a part of that positioning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then eventually, over time, you start to. Now, let me ask you this: do you think that, like, because I saw Speed, Power, Control, and Endurance by Jim Chapin. Did
Yeah.
Hudson put out that video?
I put out that video. I produced that video. In the beginning part of that video, you can hear my voice doing the voiceover.
I know you were narrating it. That's right.
And I produced the entire video. And in the beginning stages, I put it out through Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And now Alfred purchased Warner Brothers, so the video is with Alfred.
Okay.
Alfred, they distribute that worldwide. But that's actually a DVD now, which is fantastic.
And now, can people go purchase this still today?
Absolutely. It's on any of the online stores, and they can go to music stores and order it. They can get it from alfred.com, and it's still available. And it still sells pretty well, even as a DVD. People still see that, even though it might be an older format.
Uh-huh.
The information that's on it is fantastic, and very soon I'll be getting that information out on digital.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to post a link down in the bottom at Show More, so that way you can go ahead and check that out for yourself. Now, speaking of Jim Chapin and watching that video, his stroke, his Moeller stroke is what he called it, almost looked like a free stroke. Or was it a free stroke? And if so, do they ever bleed into one another?
Great question, Adam. And what's interesting about it is, yes, Moeller uses the free stroke inside of it from a different movement. It's still a rebound stroke. Remember, free stroke is just the rebound.
Right.
So whether you use it with George Lawrence Stone from your wrist, as I just did, or whether you do it with Moeller, that's a Moeller motion, but I'm using the free stroke to rebound the stroke. Or I can use the free stroke with Gladstone in fingers. This is also the free stroke. So the free stroke was important to learn first from Moeller to get that into your hand, and then whatever movement you choose to use from your wrist, the whip, or your fingers was absolutely your own choice in playing. And that's what Chapin did so brilliantly.
Absolutely, yeah. And one thing I noticed about Moeller and George Lawrence Stone, I don't know if we can get a shot of that here, but they held the drumstick with the thumb pointing down. I saw a picture of George Lawrence Stone. I'll share that with you. I found it on the internet, as well as Moeller. And this whipping motion goes back to Basel, Switzerland.
Believe it or not, that holding the position this way is a Basel, Switzerland grip
Gotcha.
that the Swedes use. So they didn't always play this way. They played this way to demonstrate the Basel movement. In Basel, Switzerland, there is a festival that goes on. It's been going on now for about 900 years. Every February, 900 years of drummers marching in the streets with fife players. It's a fantastic festival. I went there 2 years ago. The festival starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's 2 days long of just drummers and fife players marching down the streets. There's about 10 to 15,000 musicians marching. It's totally crazy. People are drinking beer. They're eating sausages. It's a fantastic festival. And everyone in the village plays drums. And they're all wearing big masks and costumes on there. And they're marching around playing. It's so incredible. And they play in that old 1,000-year-old Basel way of playing.
Right, yeah.
There's a great drummer student of mine by the name of Claus Hessler,
Oh, yeah.
who has done the Camp Duty Update and several books regarding this kind of rudimental study. about that Basel kind of playing. And then from the Basel playing many hundreds of years ago, when it came to America, it was during the Revolutionary War that we adapted that kind of playing.
Right.
And then from the Revolutionary War in the late 1700s to then the Civil War in the mid 1800s, drummers still played that way, but they began to refine it by the Civil War putting their thumbs on the stick.
That's right, yeah.
And it began to become a little bit more refined in their playing, and they adapted. And then Sanford A Moeller studied from these old Civil War drummers.
Yep.
Back in like the late 1800s, like 1895, he was like 14 years old.
Yeah.
And in 1895, where do you go to take drum lessons if you're inspired to play drum lessons? There's no music store. There's no local drum hero. There's no online anything.
Mm-hmm.
So he found old soldiers' homes of soldiers from the Civil War that were doing some teaching, who were some of the drummers. He found one near his home, and he went there and started to learn a lot of this motion. And these old soldiers, of course, they were playing traditional grip. When they played, each of their strokes to get more power was a big arc stroke,
Right.
and that's where this motion came down. So when Moeller was taking lessons as a child, he saw these old drummers that were in their 80s and 90s, and these guys were old. They'd walk in real old, and they'd kind of sit down, and then they'd pick up the sticks, and they'd play real high with great power.
Right.
And Moeller was blown away. And Moeller told Jim Chapin, it was amazing. A 90-year-old man came in to give me a lesson. A 20-year-old man gave me the lesson. And after the lesson was over, a 90-year-old man left. So Moeller, as a kid, just saw this youth come out of these players, and they played with great power and great control.
Right.
And Moeller did not invent the stroke. He made the correlation between that movement and the speed, power, control, and endurance that they had.
That's excellent, Don. You know, and we're going to take that story because I'm going to be interviewing some old drum corps guys. And how did that morph into what we have today, known as the drum corps style? But it all goes back to Moeller. And most of those people that after the Civil War, they went on to form bands and drum corps itself. So that was actually the birth of drum corps, was right after the Civil War.
Absolutely. And these drummers that got together started teaching younger drummers who wanted to continue marching.
Mm-hmm.
And then as 1900 rolled around, that's when all of a sudden drum set, with Baby Dodds playing with Louis Armstrong, drum set evolved more and became more of a new instrument that in the beginning stages they called it a contraption.
Short for traps,
playing,
right?
Yeah, the pedal with your foot, and your left foot played a low boy, little hat, and you were playing. This was like a contraption, which they eventually shortened to trap set.
Right.
Which, you know, people like Kelli Rae and so many great drummers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Daniel too is another phenomenal historical drummer around there.
Yeah, I talked to him, and you know, he says, "Keep me on your leash. I'll be interested." And I told him, I said, "We're not ready yet because we're not talking about drum set just yet. We're going to talk about just basics, stroke, form, all that stuff." So, going on to the third person of the three founding fathers, I guess, as Max Roach also put it in some way of his own terms, Billy Gladstone in the finger technique. And was he more orchestral? And obviously, aside from marching and being in the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, there was also orchestras playing. And so did Billy Gladstone come from that school of thought?
Absolutely. Billy Gladstone came really from the orchestral, you know, wearing a tuxedo, always looking dapper, standing up in front of a snare drum on a stand and playing, as opposed to the rudimental guys that had a harness or a strap and the drum was on their side.
Correct.
So Billy adapted his playing by playing in front of himself. And at that time, there were many orchestras playing, and there were many theaters playing that had vaudeville and musical acts. And they had a pit band of which they would perform in the pit band.
Mm-hmm.
And Billy Gladstone was not only a phenomenal drummer, but a brilliant inventor. he invented a snare drum that has lugs on the side of it that you can tune the bottom head from the top, tune the top head from the top, and tune them both together from the top.
Yeah, the three-way tuning system. That's right.
Brilliant system, which one of his best students, Arnie Lang, has taken over and continues to make those snare drums. You know, kind of interesting, Adam, is that Shelly Manne and Ted Reed were two of the drummers that I was able to sit down with and understand this Gladstone, you know, concept. And on the cover of Ted Reed's book, Syncopation, is a picture of Ted Reed at a snare drum, and that snare drum is a Billy Gladstone snare drum with a Billy Gladstone snare stand that he made.
Right, which was a
Billy
music stand. And then they converted it, right?
Well, yeah, he wanted to have a much nicer looking stand that would hold his snare drum. He played on stage, and Billy Gladstone wanted to have a certain look, and that's why he invented the tuning. He felt that if he had to tune his drum in the course of a show, he didn't want to have to be kind of going under the drum and turning it around and doing all that. He wanted to have the ability of tuning it just from the top, and at that time, they used calfskin heads.
Right.
So they went out of tuning very easily.
Yeah, and I bought Chet Falzarano, his book, Billy Gladstone. Excellent book. Talked to him a couple of times. We showed one of Billy's inventions in our last episode, which was the Gladstone pad that Ludwig took over. So amazing, amazing history. Now, when it comes to drummers today, I personally have seen it, and I've also personally experienced it. I just didn't know how to label it or describe it. But these styles and techniques all kind of somewhat bleed into one another, and drummers grab from whether if they're doing a certain, like for me, for drum set, I'll incorporate a lot more Moeller or a whipping action. You know, if I'm in concert band, I go more to the Billy Gladstone approach, or orchestra, because I play in the orchestra.
Or Stone, or George Lawrence Stone from
George
the
Lawrence Stone, correct.
Absolutely, Adam. These are, again, these positions are just tools of mechanics. It's science of movement. And many of these great players, listen, Shelly Manne and Ted Reed, these were brilliant, brilliant artists, and they played, you know, fantastically. And on the drum set, where Morello played and Jim Chapin, because of all the different angles of the drum set, think about what we're learning. There are three basic hand positions if I'm playing in match grip. Germanic position, which is at a 90-degree angle. 45-degree angle for American.
Right.
And then parallel for French.
That's right.
Well, if I'm on the drum set, I might be playing my right cymbal in French and my snare drum in American.
Correct, yeah.
And I might play that groove, and that might feel good. But I also might be playing French grip Stone from my wrist, and I might be playing American grip Moeller.
Good point. Correct.
So I'm going to be mixing these positions. So what Shelly Manne had said is, he said, understand the positions. The suggestion from them was to study with Morello first to get the free stroke in my hands. Then to go to Chapin and learn this arm and whip motion. Then to go to Gladstone and learn that finger technique and that finger movement. And Gladstone, again, was a brilliant man that wanted to have all types of drumming facility. So each of those players understood each other's technique.
Gotcha.
This was the key. Gladstone could play Stone and Moeller's technique. Moeller could play Stone and Gladstone, and Stone could play Moeller and Gladstone. They knew each other, so they used it. And interesting enough, Buddy Rich once told me, when I asked him how he learned these techniques, he said he learned them when he was on the road as the opening act for George M. Cohan. George M. Cohan was a famous song and dance man back in the early 1900s. And he was like, he wrote songs, he wrote shows. He was the one that started the whole concept of Broadway in New York, all the theater district, of having all these shows go on. When you go to Times Square in New York and you go to the beginning of Broadway where the theater district starts, there's a big statue of George M. Cohan. And there's a movie that James Cagney starred in called Yankee Doodle Dandy that is the life of George M. Cohan. And I tell all of my students as a part of our learning process to go watch that movie, because you'll be able to hear the songs and the music of what was being played at that time. So I asked Buddy Rich, how'd you learn this stuff? He said, well, I was the opening act for George M. Cohan. And in the pit, George M. Cohan used 3 of the top drummers to play his show because he was the biggest act in the world. He either used Stone, Moeller, or Gladstone.
Wow.
So when Buddy Rich was not on stage performing, he was in the pit sitting next to those 3 great drummers. So that's how Buddy learned those techniques, by watching these drummers play, taking a couple lessons from them, and then when it was Buddy's chance to go on stage and perform, he began to apply some of these ideas.
Right. Yeah.
After several years of doing that, you're going to start to fine-tune these techniques and get them really well.
Wow, amazing. And, Dom, I'm so glad to talk to you about this, because during my, I guess, quest for drummer knowledge, back in my day, obviously, we didn't have the internet. So it was all hearsay, VHS tapes, and word of mouth, of other teachers. So it's an amazing time that a lot of young drummers are growing up in right now, because they can go access all this information. Kai, did you have any questions?
No.
You just soaking it all in?
Yeah.
A lot of information in
Yeah,
there.
it's
Boy, this is great, Kai, that you can, Kai, as you learn this stuff and you hear this at your young age, to get this information and to start to apply this really is the groundswell of the core of the foundation of drumming. And when you understand this at a certain age, especially at your young age, Kai, this will be very, very helpful in the future. I am 66 years young, and I just got back from playing in 4 different countries in the past 2 weeks.
Did you hear that?
I'm only home for 2 days, and then I leave tomorrow morning early to fly to Indianapolis to go to the Percussive Arts Society International Convention. I'm there for a few days, then I'm back home for a couple days, then I'm off to Miami for some more intense traveling and performing. So to me, I'm still going strong at 66, and I always say, the reason why I think I'm still playing at a really high level is because I learned these techniques at a young age. It's not because I have any special gift. It's not because I have any special talent. It's none of that. I learned these techniques and put the hard work of practicing them to get them into my hands and into my feet and to a part of myself. So as I'm learning them, I put them so deep into my playing that when I go to play, I'm not thinking of it. It just kind of happens, and that's the subconscious and the unconscious working at its best.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Very good words of advice. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the young drummers out there, or even the old drummers who are getting back into it, before we let you get back to your day?
Absolutely, Adam, and thank you to both Adam and Kai. You guys are doing fantastic here by being able to capture this information and passing this on. I do many of these interviews, and I have many of these opportunities to go out there and share with many of these online stories and interviews. And you can never do enough of these, because if we reach one person and they begin to discover these great, great masters that came before us, nothing is new. But what has to be consistent is the hard work and the effort to put the time into it, to program our muscles and learn these skills, maintain a level of relaxation and a level of fun. This, to me, is still fun. I started playing drums, inspired at the age of 11 because it was fun. And now, as I'm in my late to mid-60s, I am still enjoying myself at a high fun level because of learning this knowledge and continuing to be a constant student. I think this is where the fountain of youth lives.
Yes.
As long as we are willing to open up our mind and continue to learn, there's information that's out there that's exciting, that's going to help me to grow, and that's going to allow me to not only discover some of my ability, but to uncover some of my ability. And by doing that, it gives me a chance to constantly grow. And as I watched all of my great teachers and these great masters, Shelly Manne still played great right till the end of his life. Morello at 82, when he passed away, was still playing great. Chapin, at 2 weeks shy of his 90th birthday, was still playing great. Even though I didn't meet Gladstone, Stone, and Moeller, through their students, I learned these techniques, and continue to travel around the world sharing them because it works. It works for us to have great facility, great enjoyment, and the art of modern drum set playing and the art of modern drumming continues to move forward in the 21st century. Thanks so much for helping that out.
Oh, well, no, thank you, Dom. I really appreciate your time. I know you don't get much sleep, but I just want to encourage you. It's a good thing to get a little sleep from time to time. Yeah.
You know, as I travel so much from country to country, this year was probably about 15 or 17 different countries. It was just totally crazy.
Wow.
And as I traveled, someone had asked me recently when I just flew back from England, literally yesterday, they said, Dom, do you have any jet lag? I said, jet lag? I had jet lag 35 years ago when I started traveling. I'm way past jet lag. I'm into jet abyss.
Wow. Yeah.
Jet abyss is deeper than lag. I'm starting to understand what Einstein said about the bending of time and universe.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Bring it on. It's exciting. And as long as you're living life with deep passion, that's where the adventure begins.
Thank you so much again, Dom. And I hope you do have a good rest of your day.
Fantastic.
All right. Take care, Dom.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. Go get it.
Wow, that was an excellent interview with Dom Famularo. Any thoughts on that?
Crazy.
Crazy. Well, yeah, his time that he spends traveling and going from different countries is pretty crazy.
Like, how does he even do that?
I don't even know, and I don't want to know. No, I'm just
He
teasing.
probably drinks a lot of coffee then.
No, actually, he doesn't.
He doesn't? Yeah.
No, from what I understand, he doesn't do a lot of...
Oh, he's really healthy.
He's
That's
very
all.
healthy. He practices a healthy lifestyle. I think that's important when you're actually trying to do something physical, is to be as healthy as possible. Hopefully that gives you a background and a history of why all these great drummers go back to the Sanford A Moeller, the George Lawrence Stone, the Billy Gladstone. I wanted you to know about that. Now, of course, we're not going to be doing a whip-like motion just yet. Right now, again, we're just going to be doing the gelatin mold effect and really working on those different types of strokes, because that's going to be very important. In the next episode, which is week 5, and I know we had a 2-part episode in the second episode as well as the first. This is where we're going to get into utilizing the free stroke in motion like Dom had talked about. Any questions or comments that you want to make, Kai?
No, I'm all right.
You're all right. He doesn't talk too much. That's okay. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah, sometimes I talk people's head off.
Sometimes, yeah, but that's okay. Well, we'll see you next time here on Learning to Drum. I'm your host, Adam Tevlin, and sitting here with Kai Tevlin, we bid you farewell. Always remember to keep swinging those sticks. That's right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.